about we start things off with a nice round of applause from our friend from Cascadeo, Mr. Jared Reimer.
Thank you. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Jared with Cascadeo. I was the founder of the company. We are a premier AWS consulting partner and managed services provider, and also a partner with NetApp. Today we're going to talk about doing Microsoft cloud infrastructure the right way, leveraging NetApp's Cloud Volume Service, which is their new file system in the Sky product. And we're going to highlight how Cascadeo can help not just with the engineering and architecture of this, but with ongoing operations, even for companies that do not have huge IT budgets or very large app deployments. So, table of contents for today. I'm going to try to keep this to about 10, 15 minutes, plus some Q&A and discussion at the end. We'll be happy to take any questions you guys might have at that time. I'm going to spend very little time on NetApp and Cascadeo marketing stuff because no one wants a sales pitch, and really talk about the right way to do programmatic deployment and configuration of NetApp CVS and Microsoft application workloads on AWS. And again, we're going to also highlight the Cascadeo.io managed services platform for ongoing infrastructure operations. So, as you guys may or may not be aware, NetApp now has a Cloud Volume Service, which is the same amazing technology that NetApp has deployed into 300,000 global on-premise customers, now available as a consumption-oriented cloud service. Key differentiation point here is that it supports all of the protocols, not just some of the protocols. So Windows shops in particular have struggled a lot with cloud migrations and have unfortunately found that all of the existing products in the market fail to address the SMB, CIFS, enterprise cloud file sharing market very effectively. So NetApp has some really unique technology here. I think most importantly, aside from the fact that the company is an established company that everybody already knows and trusts, it's built on ONTAP. So it's the same platform, except NetApp themselves manages the hardware, the operating system, the infrastructure, and delivers that as a consumption-oriented managed service. So this is a radically disruptive way to consume enterprise storage. And I would say, up until this point, there really has not been a good answer for specifically Microsoft workloads who need very highly available, scalable, and not fixed cost, kind of step function cost procurement hassles around cloud storage. In the old days, we did it by kind of rolling our own. We would deploy our own NFS servers or Windows file servers in the cloud. There was a ton of operational complexity, not just around running these things, but setting it up correctly across availability zones, trying to deal with high availability and failover scenarios in the cloud. Pretty much everybody got this wrong. There was some attempts at convincing companies to refactor their architecture and their applications around S3 and around object storage. And for apps that can be refactored, that's not a bad choice, but most applications, you don't have the luxury of doing that. You have to support whatever protocols the application assumes to exist, and oftentimes that's a Windows file share. So, Cascadeo, as you may or may not know, is a 12-year-old company based in Seattle. We also have a large operation in Metro Manila in the Philippines, where a lot of our managed services folks and cloud engineers are. We're 12 years old, 75-ish people. We're one of the few boutique scale premier AWS consulting partners, and we also do managed services. So we have historically sold managed services into large enterprise, companies like CenturyLink. We did the operations and cloud backend for Nest Thermostat when they first launched that product, and help them build their internal ops team. So Cascadeo has always served kind of the high end of the managed services cloud market. We're now launching at this trade show Cascadeo.io, which takes 12 years of learning around cloud infrastructure, telemetry, alerting, incident response, and data-driven operations, so applying AI and ML and predictive analytics to infrastructure telemetry, and turning that into a much more approachable self-service kind of SaaS service for managed services. The idea here is, if you have an existing AWS application workload and you want 24-hour-a-day human incident response support, effectively your own NOC, that's now as low as $500 a month instead of $5,000 to $25,000 a month, which is what Cascadeo has historically charged for that service. The way that we're able to do this is through very extensive automation, and in particular, if you don't already have good monitoring and alerting and chat ops infrastructure. We will programmatically deploy that into your AWS account for you. If you do have those tools, they snap right into our analytics framework. You don't need to be an API developer. You don't need to learn any coding to do this. We modeled it after Slack, making it very easy for end users to connect their existing applications to our system. But really, the key thing you're buying here is peace of mind, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, humans and robots working together to look after your cloud deployments. Okay, so enough marketing stuff. Now we're going to talk about nerd stuff, which is really what I'm more comfortable talking about, honestly. My background is in engineering. I've worked in the ISP and hosting world since I was a college kid, 20-some years ago. We were asked by NetApp to showcase CVS with Microsoft Workloads done the right way. And by the right way, I specifically mean in a repeatable fashion, not as a series of one-offs. Our experience, we've done over 100 cloud migration projects for different companies, big companies, little companies, everything in between. And one of the things we've observed is that for whatever reason, Windows workloads tend to be the most incorrectly deployed and operated workloads. I think a lot of that is the history where folks in the Windows ecosystem did not have heavy scripting and automation backgrounds. They kind of came up through the ranks learning point and click, wizard-driven deployments. And as a result, most of the Windows deployments that we come across are effectively one-offs. They are deployments that were built by a human and are treated like pets. If it gets sick, someone fixes it. The ability to recreate that deployment, the system state is unclear because there's no clear record of who changed what when. These deployments tend to be very long-running, meaning they get deployed and then patched and maintained for many, many years, as opposed to cloud-native deployments, which typically are short-lived deployments that are refreshed frequently. So we said, how can we, as quickly and painlessly as possible, without a $100,000 consulting budget, how do we take NetApp CVS, take reference Windows workloads, and deploy them to AWS in a completely repeatable fashion, the right way, with all of the security hardening, all of the high availability functionality you want, consistent with the reference architectures that Microsoft and Amazon have certified. And oh, by the way, we want to leverage NetApp CVS as the storage, not only for regular file share, but also for SQL Server. So what Cascadeo did was we went to the amazing library of AWS Quick Start CloudFormation templates. We found CloudFormation templates that did things like setting up Active Directory and SQL Server in a highly available fashion. We then wrote our own very small integration framework using CloudFormation and Lambda to automatically provision and then attach Cloud Volume Services from NetApp. So our presentation today really focuses around putting all of this together into a cohesive production-ready system as quickly as possible. Now, CloudFormation takes a while to execute, so instead of making you watch me press the buttons, I'm going to show you some time-lapse video that shows this happening very quickly, but you'll see that it's all real and all entirely approachable, and stuff you can do today using the existing reference architectures, CloudFormation scripts that are provided and certified by AWS and Microsoft, as well as the stuff that we're going to be releasing publicly around CVS deployment automation and config management. So the output here of the CloudFormation scripts is a completely functional end-to-end app deployment of a Windows workload with SQL Server, with CVS, with Active Directory, all of that done entirely through automation, and then a little behind the scenes look at how CVS snaps into Windows workloads on AWS. First, some of you may recall that SQL Server has different availability modes, and in particular, you can do synchronous replication, you can do asynchronous replication. We chose the default SQL stack that Amazon publishes because it's one that a lot of companies use as a starting point. It's designed to be highly available right out of the box, and it's consistent with Microsoft design patterns. So if you're wondering what our SQL deployment looks like, this is the answer. And again, this is all stuff that is available publicly for your reuse. You do not need to go and reinvent any of these wheels. Okay, so now we will show the first of two little video clips here. And again, this is a time-lapse recording of CloudFormation provisioning NetApp CVS in a completely automated fashion. And then in the second video, I'll show us connecting that to Windows SQL Server workloads. So here you go. We've obfuscated the keys. This is a CloudFormation deployment. For those who have not seen this before, These keys are provided by NetApp when you sign up for CVS, so we're pasting those in here to the CloudFormation template. We're giving it a name. We're saying, don't roll back, and off we go. You can now see the deployment is in progress. This is all driven through Lambda and through CloudFormation, so little tiny bits of Node, that's all that it takes to do this. And in just a minute, or in about 8 seconds, you will see the output of this magically appear. Haha, there we go. So we now have completely deployed NetApp CVS through automation, and we have an endpoint that we can connect to our Windows workload. So in the second video clip, which I will now switch over to, we will show you that same volume being easily connected, just as you would with any other Windows file share, even though this is delivered as a cloud service by NetApp, to your Windows instance, that quick and easy. It looks and works just like the existing NetApp ONTAP product that you've probably all worked with for years, except now it's delivered as a consumption-oriented SaaS service or PaaS service instead of as a retail product that you would buy and deploy into your own data center. All right, so what did we prove here? We proved that we can not only deploy Windows and SQL Server and Active Directory and all the security groups and VPCs, all of that infrastructure, but we can also programmatically deploy NetApp CVS and then connect it not only to Windows as a file share, but also as a database store for Microsoft SQL Server. Performance on this is every bit as good as regular NetApp on-prem. Same tools, same security, all that delivered as a professionally managed service by NetApp. However, that only completes 90% of the puzzle. NetApp is going to be operationally responsible for your storage. You still have to be operationally responsible for the application workload. And here you can see there's a couple of Windows failover servers, there's some domain controllers, and then at the top there's Cascadeo.io, which is a micro instance that Cascadeo deploys into client environments that streams operational telemetry back to our company for managed services. We don't assume that we're going to come in and replace your tools, your infrastructure, your monitoring framework. Instead, our approach is to stream the data into our SaaS backend and to provide a support contract building on whatever tooling you might already have. And if you're missing some of that tooling, if you don't already have a ticketing system, if you don't already have monitoring and telemetry, if you don't already have Slack or Teams for chat ops, we programmatically deploy those for you as part of the service offering, and that starts at $500 a month. So it's very, very disruptively priced. This is something that we've always charged $5,000 to $25,000 a month for, albeit with a much heavier kind of front-end sales process. This is meant to be as self-serve and easy as possible. And again, the secret to it is we're going to deploy a micro instance into your environment. You pay a few bucks a month for that. All of the telemetry streams to us, and we operate it from there. So NetApp operates the file share. They have all operational responsibility for that. You can click to deploy. You can scale it to 100 terabytes in minutes. The rest of the system, Cascadeo, if you want, can operate under contract. You now have a completely managed cloud environment built on the same technologies and platforms that you use today in your conventional data center, but done cloud native through automation for full stack repeatability. This is not a hand-built point-and-click one-off. This is cloud done the right way through automation, through CloudFormation. And at the end of the day, somebody has to answer the call when it breaks. NetApp's job is to keep your file share alive. Cascadeo's job is to do the rest. So if you're interested in learning more about the Cascadeo.io platform for cloud managed services, our booth is right over there. And I will show you one last thing. We use Influx Data's platform as the core of our MSP platform. This is actual telemetry from the NetApp, CVS, and Windows deployment that we just showed you. So these are graphs in the Influx Cloud web interface. This is how our NOC does operations on the back end. We collect everything. We feed it into InfluxDB. We do machine learning on event data, like text machine learning on tickets and human annotations and alerts. We do time series predictive analytics on machine telemetry, like how many IOPS, how busy is the CPU. And by doing that, we get better and better every day, and we're able to offer this at a much lower price point because it's much less dependent on multi-tiered human operation, and there's a much higher factor of automation, and that's how we're able to bring the price point down. So there you go. From zero to production, Microsoft Workloads done right on the cloud, NetApp CVS as your highly available, nearly infinitely scalable, consumption-oriented data store, Cascadeo as your MSP partner for 24/7 human ops, and oh, by the way, none of this is a permanent fixture. You can redeploy all of it at will. You can do a dev deployment, a QA deployment. If you want to test a new build of your application, it's click to deploy. Contrast that to the way that I suspect many of you have historically run Windows workloads in the cloud, where everything is a one-off. That is a bad, bad plan. Trust me. That story never ends well, because just when you need it most, you find that you do not have the ability to provably recreate the system state exactly as it runs in production. If you enforce that state through automation, so many of your other problems around DR, around business continuity, around sandbox development and test environments, all of those problems are solved implicitly. So, my advice, automate the heck out of everything, but don't spend your precious time doing it yourself, because there's so much great content out there in the community that you can tap into that's already been tested and hardened and approved by the vendors. There's no reason to pay someone like Cascadeo to do this as a professional services project when you could really get all the way to correctly architected production deployments on your own. Of course, if you want professional services help, we do that too. That's actually our company's background. But we think that the future is really in self-service, and it's really in bringing down these complicated architectures to an audience that historically has not even really been aware of them, and making them accessible. And that's really what CloudFormation in this context is all about. It's making it possible for you to go from zero to production like that. So, that's the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions anybody might have. Also, rotten vegetables, if anyone thinks that's not so good. Feel free to challenge any of our assumptions. And with that, I thank you guys for your attention. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of activity here, and I'm really impressed with how many people showed up, so thank you.